everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Unscripted and Unchoreographed. I'm your host, Niamh, and I have my lovely co-host, Sarah. And today we are very excited to have the wonderful, amazing Robyn Byrne.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks, Niamh. Thanks, Sarah.
So as always, Robyn, how did you start in the art?
So I'm from Mullingar. So I started dancing very, very young, like every other, 3-year-old that wants to do something when they have a lot of energy. And so my mum brought me to a ballet school that it didn't last very long. And then maybe when I was about 7, Katerina Lau, that runs Shawbrook, was running classes after school in a local hall. So I was doing them and actually really enjoying them. And again, I stopped for some reason, I don't know. And then my mum was in Tesco one day and Annika was there, and Annika was like, grabbed her. She was like, you have to bring your child to my school, Shawbrook. It's in Legan, County Longford. And my mum was like, oh, I don't drive. So my mum learned to drive so that she could take me to ballet lessons. Yeah, very cute. Yeah. I mean, it's only 20 minutes away, but, there's no way. If you don't drive, you can't get to Shawbrook. There's no transport or whatever. So Shawbrook is an old farmhouse that when Annika met her partner Philip, who owns the farm, they slowly started converting. So some of the barns, the cow sheds are turned into dance studios. Some of the outhouses are now accommodation. They've extended it beyond that. They have a forest and they've built a studio, and there's cabins that you can stay in the woods, and there's outdoor toilets. So it used to be a ballet school and it used to be summer school, but now it's solely run as a residency space. That any artist can apply to spend some time there. So yeah, it's an amazing place. Like, you can shut off and 24/7 access to things, and yeah, a really good place to be creative and just lock in, as they say.
And so then from kind of there, were you just specifically doing dance classes at Shawbrook, or where did you go next?
So one of the other amazing things about Shawbrook is that Annika, well, it wasn't just about ballet for her. So we were always doing contemporary with Annika and, other expressive things. And we did jazz, and she always brought in international teachers. So from a really young age, like, I was learning from really amazing people. And when I was 16, I went over to work with Kathy Sharp and, just things like that Annika was very good at introducing us to. So contemporary dance was always there for me, which I think is not that common. I think, kids would start a little bit later. But like, I remember one year, even when they were building the stage in the forest, we were going down there in summer school in leotards and like playing in the muck and like making dance routines in the muck. And so yeah, it was always part of it. I should have known I was always going to be a contemporary dancer. But then a little later, when I was meant to be going off to college and all my friends were going to NUIG or this and that, I was like, oh, I want to go to college. So I applied to go to DIT, which is now TU, to do environmental science. So I ended up actually going and taking that course. And I only did it for a year. And, I was waking up at 9 o'clock in the morning, going to science labs, and was like, this is not what I'm meant to be doing. And so I dropped out. And then I was like to my mum, why did you make me go to university? She's like, I didn't. You were the one that wanted to go to university. And if I didn't let you do that, it was something I just had to be like, I had to try and do the normal thing for a while. But then I was like, okay, no, I want to dance full time. I auditioned for a college in the UK, didn't get in, was like crestfallen. And then I went to the College of Dance and I did a year there, and then reapplied and then got into Northern School of Contemporary Dance.
Was the arts a thing in your family? When you said to your mum, look, I'm going to do the dance thing, was she surprised or what?
So, okay, there's more to this story about my mum driving me to Shawbrook. I've actually made a little dance film called Oh Before I, where I brought my mum to Shawbrook and we danced there together. And we realised the time that we made that film, it was like exactly 20 years, roughly to the day, that my mum had started driving me to Shawbrook, that we made this film. But my mum has always wanted to dance. She's always wanted to be a dancer, and it just wasn't an option for her growing up and like her upbringing and stuff. So it wasn't a surprise to her that I wanted to dance, and she's always been super supportive and doing things like learning to drive to take me to classes and stuff. But I made this film with her and for her to kind of give her something back. And so we spent a week dancing together. But the arts is in my family. My dad is a singer, and my uncle is a sound engineer and a singer. My granddad was a dancer and he could sing as well. No, it's in the family, for sure. And they're all very supportive. I didn't have to fight with any of them to, be allowed to kind of pursue it, which I know can be the case for a lot of people.
And from getting into the Northern contemporary dance in England, maybe could you explain what was the process of auditioning? What was it like?
I mean, I'd auditioned for a few schools. I also auditioned for London Studio Centre, but the musical theatre strand. And I'm always like, oh my God, what would have been liked if I was a musical theatre dancer? Like, I'd be a completely different person, I think. But yeah, no, so I'd gotten in there and I'd gotten into Northern. I don't know, when I got to Northern, and it's such a beautiful building. It was an old synagogue. So there's just like the theatre is stunning. I got in there and there's carpets everywhere and couches, and I was like, yeah, this is my thing. So yeah, the first year I auditioned, I just wasn't ready. And I remember at the time there was there's been a few different principals now, but at the time his name was Gurmit, and he was quite strict and very old school. And we had to audition, we had to do our solos on the stage, but we had to warm up all together on the stage. And I remember I was that nervous, like I'd lost all sense of spatial awareness, and I accidentally smacked a girl in the face when I was like trying to warm up. And that already sets a bad tone, and I was just like, oh God, no, what have I done? What am I doing here? And then yeah, it just kind of fell apart then. So I didn't get in that year. But yeah, the second year that I came back, when you go through a full year, like I did with the College of Dance, like you're in every day, you're really working towards one specific goal, and that is to get into the conservatoire. So I was really ready, and I got in, and then two other Irish girls got in who were my friends who had been in the College of Dance with me. So we all got in, and it was just like, yes, like, let's go Leeds. Yeah. So it was fun. Yeah. Yeah. And I loved the training there. We were like a transitionary period. So we changed principal at the time. The school was changing ever so slightly from like a lot of Graham and a lot of Cunningham to try and flip it ever so slightly to do more somatics and release-based classes. So yeah, we were a little bit transitionary, but I had a brilliant time. Yeah, I just thought the school really suited me. Like I had done a lot of ballet, and we had ballet every day, different contemporary techniques every day, and then all the creative stuff in the afternoons and stuff. And it was a great training for me. And then I also stayed on and did their postgraduate company, Verve, and we toured then Europe for like, I don't know, half a year, however many months it was. But yeah, we did works by Theo Klinkard, Kerry Nichols, Lucas Silvestrini of Protein Dance, and Dougie Thorpe of Mad Dogs. So yeah, it was great. It was full on. And that really set me up. I really realised being in the UK, it's so competitive, and, all the dancers are of such a high standard. Really, like, it's very hard to, until you really know yourself and you know what you can bring. I think it's very hard to find your place. So I was like, at least if I do Verve, I will have had the opportunity to perform and tour and be in front of live audiences. And then if that never happens again, at least I've done it that way. So that was my kind of pull to do in Verve, because a lot of people are like, oh, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just go straight into getting work? But I just knew I wasn't ready. So yeah, I did Verve. Yeah. And then I ended up working in a bar for a really long time because I didn't get any work for a while after that. But I think that's all part and parcel in leaving dance college and trying to bridge the gap.
How did you find living in Leeds, especially like coming from Ireland? What is kind of the dance scene in Leeds?
Yeah, I mean, everything is still kind of pointed towards London, but I loved living in Leeds. We lived very close to the school, and like the school is in Chapeltown, and it's a very multicultural area. It's quite mixed, and so that means there was always like dubstep kind of nights, and it was just you didn't really have to go into the centre of Leeds very often, and that's where all the other universities were. It was very affordable to live there, so there was always house parties and stuff, and it was just yeah, it was just absolutely, we just had lots of fun. Like, it was great. Yeah, I really liked it. But like in terms of the dance scene and stuff, they have Yorkshire dance there, and the scene wasn't so big there when I was there, but I guess when I was leaving, maybe the cohort after me, they all tried to stick around a bit more. Set up professional dance classes and, small other things. But I think I always felt like you still had to go to London if you wanted to work. Like, most of the companies are still working in and around that area. But it's been so long since I've left, I can't really speak on it. Like, I went back maybe a few years ago, and it did feel like stuff was happening there. I think it's when people make the decision to stay and like how willing they are to make it happen. And just also with funding, like how I know it seems harder in England even than it is in Ireland to get funded. So all that stuff comes into play. But it wasn't when I was there and working in a bar, like, when I finished with Verve and I ended up working in a bar, I found it very hard to kind of to link in with anything. I didn't really feel like, there was a place for me there. So that's why I left.
And so then after Verve and living in Leeds, where did you go? Did you go back straight to Ireland?
I came home and it's almost like I needed an excuse to come home because I didn't really know how to quit my job. I'm such a people pleaser. So Fidget Feet were doing one of their creative intensives. And I think that was in like November or something. So I was literally like, I went into my job. I was like, look, I have to leave. This is happening in Ireland. And so I just left and never came back. Same with my apartment. I just left. I just was like, that's it. That's what I'm doing. I'm not coming back. So yeah, I did the aerial intensive with Fidget Feet in the Aerial Creation Centre. And then I was home for Christmas. And then I just got a random message of Chrissy Ardle, who is an aerialist living in Scotland, asking me if I wanted a job. So then I went to Scotland and worked there for a few months. And then I went to Sicily and I joined a course for professionals called Modem Pro. And I did that it was meant to be for 6 months. Maybe I did 4 months and then I came home. I was in this kind of thing. I was just like wishy-washy in here and there. And then I ended up coming back to Mullingar. And that's when I really kind of was like, okay, I'm on the dole, I'm in Mullingar. What do I do? How do I make this thing happen for me? And I started working in Mullingar Art Centre, teaching classes, which was brilliant, but the teaching thing just wasn't for me. It can really take up all your time, especially like, the Mullingar Art Centre teaches classes like every day. Like there's just so much going on out of that building, and they really focus on their youth work and stuff. So I was doing it all the time and there wasn't time for anything else. So I really had to break out of that. And I actually remember, so maybe one of the first I auditioned for Emma Martin. That was my first job. Was Emma Martin was doing an opera with Irish National Opera. So that was my first professional gig. I was going to remember another story, which was when me and Rachel were trying to make Losing Your Body. Rachel Nivrain. She'd gotten into the Fringe and we had no money, so we were rehearsing for free and everything. And at the time, I was being means tested for benefits, and I don't know how they've calculated this. I was making no money, but whatever from my records were like, well, she's making enough money that she only needs €40 a week, which was a joke because I was so poor. And by the time I got the train, this was before as well, the travel had dropped in price. It was €20. So by the time I got the train home and back to collect my dole money, I was left with €20. So we were working on pennies. But at that time as well, I was like, if I wasn't doing dance teaching, I wouldn't take on any other job, because if I took on another job, then I definitely wasn't dancing. So it was this fine balance of being like, trying to work something kind of like performance adjacent, and trying not to work in another job that would take away from me being able to do other arts things. And then also doing a lot of work for free, which I know, they say don't do that and pay the artists. But, if you're making work yourself and you're trying to get yourself out there, that's what, unfortunately, sometimes you have to do. So that's what we were doing.
I think as well, like what you totally said there is valid. I think the teaching thing, it's like anything. It just suits some people and other people it doesn't, and it does take a lot of time. It's because it's a valid, art form, or so you need to give it the time it deserves. And I think it's really admirable to say like, look, this isn't working for me, or like, there's someone else who really, really could give this the time and energy it needs.
Yeah. I think it's just a big responsibility when hundreds of kids are coming to your classes and they're relying on you, and you have to do a good. I know I obviously I cared about it a lot, but that is it. It just took a lot of my time, and very quickly you're doing all of the end of year shows, all of the competitions, and you're putting in extra time on top of, and it just becomes a full-time job very quickly.
And the thing as well that you said about like kind of free work, and that it is a thing that you kind of have to do when you're starting out, or if you want to work with certain companies, because everyone's in the same boat. Nobody really has that much money to give. Like, they'd love to pay everyone, but it's just the nature of the beast, I suppose.
I got one. I remember when I was coming, I came back and I was kind of like not really sure what was going on and was finding it very hard because, there isn't even many auditions or anything like that. And I didn't really know how to get in there. Liv O'Donoghue, actor and dancer, said to me, you just have to show up. Like, if people just see you around, she was like, eventually, you're going to get emails. People are just going to be like, they see you. And that's the most important thing in Ireland is just being here and showing up, doing all the classes, doing the workshops, and, things come out of that. And that is what happened. The scene is small at the end of the day. It is small.
So your first job was with Emma Marsh in the National Opera. You've obviously worked with Emma since then.
Yeah.
What is it like working with her?
We're in the Tyrone Guthrie Centre now with Emma for a new show called Soft God. So I absolutely love working with Emma. And it was massive for me. We were doing Orfeo ed Euridice as my first job, because we did that for, I think we opened at Galway International Arts Festival, and then we ended up doing a tour the following year. So it was a really big job for me as my first job, and I felt validated. I felt like, I can make this work in Ireland, and it wasn't going to be, that it could happen for me, basically. So yeah, I did that, and then I've worked with Emma ever since. I've worked on a film of hers, and then we did night dances, and now this new show. I love working with Emma. I feel very, as an artist, I feel seen working in her room. You get a lot of space to be creative, but then also the worlds and the spaces that she's building are really exciting places to work inside. And I just feel from all sides, from a body perspective and a creative perspective and a mind perspective, I feel very linked and just very excited by the work that she makes, and she's an amazing person to work for.
And you work very well together, obviously, or else you wouldn't be working still. I was going to ask as well, obviously being a performer, dancer, choreographer, Robyn, you are a movement director and have worked with amazing companies, really amazing, interesting theatre companies. How did that happen? Do you think did it just come out of what you were doing as a choreographer, or was it something you were drawn to?
I was drawn to it. Yeah, I was drawn to it. I kind of had to push myself. I feel like people were coming to me for that kind of work, and I hadn't fully gotten into it. I hadn't really thought about it, and I didn't want to just, say that I was that and rock up to those types of gigs and then not have the experience. So I applied to the Next Generation Award to research that. And so, I have spent a lot more time kind of working as a movement director. I was working with Kate Finnegan, had a play recently called Gammy, directed by Laura Sheeran, and I worked on that as movement director, which is a really fun one because Emer Keating, the actor, was playing, I think it was 6 different characters and at once, and in dialogue. So she was in dialogue with herself as all these different characters, and she was constantly switching between all of them. So that was a really fun show to work on and to really kind of hone those skills that I'd been spending so much time kind of researching and stuff. But it's the movement direction thing. I haven't done it as much, but the jobs that I have done have been really, really interesting. I also I worked on a short recently where one of the actors had MS. He actually had a form of MS, but he was also playing a character with MS. And so, my job was to kind of make sure that felt sincere, authentic and genuine, which is a huge responsibility. So, I think what's fun about movement direction is you have to put in a lot of research, and it's not just I know, well, with any job, you do a certain amount of research, but I feel like with movement direction, it's really, when you're trying to do something of a time and a place or a specific quality or type of person, or in this case, an illness, you have to do your research because you don't know about these things. And so it's a constant learning, and that part of it's really, really fun.
You have a wonderful new show coming up in the Project Art Centre.
I have a show coming up called Queen of the Meadows, which I have been working on for 3 years, a really long time. Yeah. On and off though, that's when you're a freelancer. I feel like when you're a freelancer, your own projects sometimes get a little bit sidelined you give to other people, and then you're like, oh my God, that show that I'm supposed to be making. My collaborator, it's a duet. Queen of the Meadows is a duet, and my collaborator, Suzanne Engbo Andersen, is Danish. So that's also another part of it, you know, trying to get the whole team together. It's not always that easy. Yeah, so that's why it's been on the journey. And sometimes I think things take that amount of time, and I'm actually really glad that it has. One thing I've learned from this, because I'm not, you know, I'm a new-ish maker, you know. I was in Losing Your Body with Rachel, and then we made MOSH together. She wrote and directed and I choreographed. But this is my first time kind of going out on my own. And what I've realized is that I take time making decisions, and like, you know, in the spot, I'm not so good. And then I have to go away and like sleep on it and be like, oh no, actually this or that, you know. So that is just the time I guess it took to make the project. But Queen of the Meadows is coming to Project Art Centre on the 8th of May for one performance as part of Live Collision International Festival. Yeah, and it's co-presented with Project. So yeah, super excited to bring it there. Live Collision is an amazing festival, by the way, which actually me and Rachel had made another show a few years ago called Glimmer, which was part of the festival. And yeah, I think it's an amazing festival. It's a live art festival, so it's a real mix of different types of shows. It's a small festival, and it just has a really lovely atmosphere. And I think Queen of the Meadows will fit in quite well with this festival, so I'm super excited. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Why is it called Queen of the Meadows?
So the show, I was originally really interested in Irish folklore, and more specifically old wives' tales. So I started researching really heavily into all that stuff, and you know, a lot of old wives' tales are quite ridiculous. You know, it's like, you know, you have to spin around a tree 3 times and then like lick your elbow, and I was like, oh my God, I don't really know how I'm going to make a dance show out of this. I mean, dance is abstract as it is. I was like, but if I start kind of, you know, doing all of that stuff, I felt like, oh, I could really make a really good like dance film out of the real theatrical side of things. But you know, I kind of was working with some of the old wives' tales that I felt could make really nice visual imagery and stuff. One of them is putting cobwebs on your cuts instead of plasters, which is something that my grandmother used to do to me. And I think that was like the initial inspiration. I was just like, I was telling somebody that story one day, and they're like, that is really odd. And I was like, yeah, I really remember her like getting a sweeping brush and like going up into the corners of the walls and like putting like, yeah, on my cuts like cobwebs. And my mum would come home from work and she'd be like, what are you doing? There's plasters in the press, you know. But my granny was just like, no, this is the way it is. So I have a lot of those types of images in it at points, or like I've been inspired by those images. You don't necessarily see that, but the inspiration is there. And then I was also interested in like different herbs and plants that are medicinal, or, you know, had been used in old Irish folklore practices. And meadowsweet is one of those. And meadowsweet is a natural aspirin. It's used for loads of different things, for stomach aches and diarrhea and those types of things. But it is also known as Queen of the Meadows. So it has a few different names. It has an Irish name as well, and it kind of was like a double meaning for me, because Queen of the Meadows we play 2 characters. Sometimes Suze is my grandmother, sometimes we're the same kind of creature, but again, that's not something the audience might necessarily take away. But for me, she represents my grandmother, and as a matriarch, the queen, well, there was a play on words there for me, so I thought Queen of the Meadows was a good title for the show.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I know like Mullingar, Midlands, where I'm from, Borderlands, they're very common things to do. I literally have a cold sore on my mouth, and my mum turned around to me yesterday and was like, spray some perfume on it. It's just a thing she's heard, and she's like, yeah, it will work. It will kill the bacteria.
Me and my friend used to visit this old woman, and she had the cure for warts. And my friend had like, I think it was like something like 10 warts on his hand. And we went to her and she made him trace both of his hands on a piece of paper and mark on the paper where his warts were. And I swear to God, the next day they were gone. I'm a believer. I'll just say that. She had the cure.
I have gone for the cure of the shingles, and it has worked.
Yeah. So the show is kind of like, it's part that, and it's a part about, I think we're trying to create a world and a feeling on stage, and we could have been in this space for 100 years, and you've just kind of entered into the room at a specific point. So we're kind of trying to inhabit a realm, and it's neither past nor future, but we're in a present moment together, and we're navigating this landscape together, me and this other dancer, and we're trying to come to terms with coexisting there, and also trying to work together to come towards some sort of happening, I guess you could say. So we work a lot with like repetitions and loops, and we were very interested in this ideas of breaking cycles and patterns in history and stuff. And we're trying to create a moment of escapism or something just away from the state of the world at the minute, the current world that we're living in. We are getting stuck in repetitive cycles of history and these types of loops and polarization and stuff. So we're just trying to create a world where we're navigating some of those things abstractly, and then trying to listen to our gut and this idea of ancestral knowledge, which is not necessarily, this thing about having the cures and stuff, in terms of modern medicine, it doesn't make sense. But there is something to a sense of belief and instinctual, I don't know, just instinctual ways of being that we were interested in. And that's kind of the basis of the ideas in the show.
So it's on the 8th of May at what time?
8 p.m, very easy. 8th of May, 8 p.m. You can get tickets on Project Art Centre's website, on Live Collision's website, or if you're a social media person, the link is in my bio. And I am robyn.redbreast. After the show, there's going to be a DJ from Foxglove Collective. Yeah. So it's just going to be a good night out.
I was going to ask Robyn if you could summarize your dance practice or arts practice, whatever you want to personally call it. Maybe what would that be? If you can't, that's totally fine, but maybe what are you really interested in? I know you have touched on it before.
I guess as a maker, I'm really interested. I don't know, it does change, but I am really, I don't know, I'm just interested in trying to make honest work. I don't know, something that comes from inside. I guess I should say the gut, considering the work that I'm making now. It feels like that's, I don't know, something that feels true to whatever I'm feeling at the moment. In terms of my performance practice, I always start off with music and with improvisation. If I'm in the studio on my own, I will always improvise to music. That's kind of, I'm not really into setting material or that kind of thing straight off the bat. I am a collaborator at heart. Even when I think of the movement directing stuff that I do, I like to collaborate. I like hearing what everybody else has to say, and, trying to work with all the heads in the room, because I think it's important to have everybody's voice heard, and that's how I like to work. I'm definitely a collaborative maker.
Have you got advice for people to handle that kind of pressure or stress of you're going into a room, you're doing an audition, or how did you handle, like you ended up accidentally hitting someone in the face in an audition the first year? What changed going back the second year and you were successful that year? Was there anything that mentally you changed by thinking about it? Or because I had the same thing. I walked into a room, there was a disaster of an audition, and it's very overwhelming where you're like, oh my God, there's suddenly so many people and they're all really, really good. And as well, it becomes very competitive in England. But have you got any advice, or how did you handle that?
Yeah, I think just I didn't have very much confidence. I think as well, like understanding who you are as an artist and finding confidence is still something that I'm struggling with and practicing. But I think, from a year in a difference of going to the college of dance, there's just a certain amount of preparation that you can do that kind of will just shine through. But from getting older, and it's far much more than what you can do, and it is actually mostly about who you are. And if I could go back and tell myself then, who you are matters, and that you actually don't know what the people on the outside are looking for, and they're not always looking for just like perfect technique. They're looking for the extra bells and the extra whistles, which everybody has. And I think I think maybe for most of my training, an advice would be to care a little bit less about being there and being the perfect student. And I think I went through my training because I, as you've heard, as I told you, I'm a bit of a people pleaser, doing it for other people, like trying to be the best because they told me to, or, all those things that psychologically are very damaging for you as a person and as an artist. Is to do for yourself. Just anything that you're doing, try and do it for yourself. And I get the most out of the jobs that I do now and the work that I do now when I'm doing it for myself, or doing it for my interests and to fill my creative cup. And that will automatically kind of shine through and give more back to the other people you're working with, B, your audience, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So that's the piece of advice I would give.
So, Robyn, if there was anything that you could get the government to do for the arts in Ireland or anywhere in general, you had a magic wand to all art forms, specifically to dance, what would you like to see?
I would like to see just the recognition for the importance of the arts, and for obviously them to keep funding us and not, I don't know what's going to happen with this new government that they still haven't properly decided what it is. Just that they recognise the importance of the arts. I feel like we're constantly fighting our corner, and a national campaign for the arts is doing excellent work. Listen to them, listen to the artists. Really listen to the artists. And I don't know, I feel like the Arts Council was under a lot of hot water there for a while, but the Arts Council is really important. What the Arts Council does is fantastic. I know people complain, oh, well, I didn't get funded or this and that. It's like everything that we do is underneath that structure. Every company I work for is funded by them. Every theatre that we go into is funded by them. It's like, it's not that simple and straightforward. I think we need to listen to the people on the ground. It would be great if the basic income for the arts was for everybody. That stayed rolling through. I think as much as people have issues with the Arts Council, they're incredibly important. They're specific, and they are, it's just thinking about the arts. And yeah, I would just like people to listen.
Listen to the artist. Listen to the artist.